I think being able to work through that and like it just showed, I guess, a different appreciation for our marriage. And like I joke now, I'm like, I think everybody needs to go through a near death experience because it just changes the way you look at your partner and how you appreciate them.
Hi, friend, and welcome to the Girlfriend's Guide to Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Kathy, 47 years young, navigating the roller coaster of midlife right alongside you. When I realized how much there was to figure out in this season of life, I thought, who better to turn to than our girlfriends? Together, we'll dive into real conversations, share wisdom, and embrace all the messy, beautiful moments of midlife. So grab your favorite drink and let's jump right in. I'm so excited you're here. Hey, friend. Today, I'm so excited. I'm excited every week, but I get to introduce you to one of my very, very best friends, Kristin Jaramillo. We met through school counseling, and I have to start by just sharing the funniest story. I got a job in 2019 working at the middle school that she worked at, and it was her and our colleague Jess's last day of work. And I go into the office to meet the two of them, and we instantly vibe. All three of us just instantly vibe. And it was at one moment that I looked down, and Kristin has the exact, and I'm talking exact same tattoo as I have on my foot, of a clover in the same spot, in the same direction, all the things, as if we were like, we had them done together, but we had never met before. So it was just kind of one of those, like, in that moment, the energy in the room between the three of us, like, it just was so meant to be. And we have been like soul friend connected ever since. Jess, we wish you were here with us. But I'm so excited.
Yes.
And your wisdom, man, this is one podcast I never thought I would be able to actually have because I didn't think you'd actually come on and do this. But you're here. I don't know how I got you into it.
Because it's you. You're going to get me to do anything. That's what you do.
You heard it right here first. I'm going to get her to do anything. So Kristin is a mom of two kiddos. And get this, her kids are 8 and 21. So we're going to talk about that big life gap there. And she has so much wisdom. I almost did a Dear Kathy episode with you because I was going to just pick your brain on all the things that parents want to know about kids and your wisdom with school counseling. But she has so much to offer outside of that. So we are going to get into that. We're going to talk about the questions I know you're dying to ask her. But I really want to just unpack life with you because you have navigated quite a bit. And with all of that comes wisdom and experience. And so first and foremost, how is midlife?
Oh, midlife. That's a trip. I think just thinking about midlife, 42 years old, and thinking back to, half my age, I was already a mom at 21. So I think that's just kind of wild. So yeah, when I first became a mom, I was young. It was not planned. Me and my husband were like, all right, here we go. This is something we're going to navigate. But to make things a little more complicated, when I was 15, I was diagnosed with lupus, so an autoimmune disorder. And after I had my daughter, I had a really, really bad flare. Lost my hair, was bedridden, just tough, really, really tough. But like I said, one of those things that I'm really, really proud of is that reserve of, like I can't quit. Like I got to keep going. I'm a mom now. I've got a little baby. And so, I think that really impacted why we have such a huge gap between our children. One was we were young. We needed to get our shit together, like I was still in college. I was not done with college. My husband, I'm so proud of him, but he was actually a high school dropout. He still needed to get his GED. And so we were just starting in a place where, not ideal, but we had to get our shit together. And so I think that coupled with what was going on with my health, we just put our nose down and just started grinding, just, working. And eventually we got our stuff together and we established careers and bought a house. And then it was this point where I'm like, oh my, I'm like approaching, geriatric pregnancy age, how they use that lovely term. And so we just kind of decided it's now or never. Let's see what happens. And, given my last name is Jaramillo, it happened. And we have an 8-year-old. And so it's just super funny parenting a 21-year-old and an 8-year-old.
I know.
It's very wild.
One's getting ready to graduate college and the
Yep.
other one's going into 3rd grade.
Yep. It's super fun. Super fun. Keeps us on our toes.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that you and I have in common is having kids young, starting our families young.
Yes.
And, you are young and broke and
Yes.
learning and making all the mistakes and learning as you go. But now, like, Co is on the other end getting all, does Malia ever go, wait a minute?
Yes.
Wait a minute. I didn't have it that good when I was 8.
Yes, she does. She definitely, it cracks me up. She'll come up from, her college visits or whatever. And I'm like, you realize you're 13 years older than him and you're fighting with him as if you're a year older. But I do think some of that comes into play, right? Like her life was drastically different than his.
Yeah.
And that's tough to navigate for sure.
Yeah. No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the biggest surprise, I think, just from the two of them? Because, we parent kids so differently, but like mine were 3.5 years apart. Yours are 13 years apart.
Yeah.
So like, what has been your biggest challenge or surprise, or both?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold, right? Because Malia is, first off, the era was a little different. When she was little, she was still like, we had a VHS player in her room, And so for those of you who don't know what VHS is, oh wait, we're midlife. We're good. Everybody knows what a VHS is. And so just having just a very different start to life, no real social media, no iPads, no cell phones, like I really, in a way, am kind of envious of her childhood and wish that Koa could have that same kind of experience. So just even generationally, given the 13-year gap, it was very, very different.
Huge.
And I think, I always kind of laughed at people that were like, oh, boys are so different. But they very much are. I am here to admit they are very different. And, Malia was just a pretty darn easy baby, and Koa was a little tougher. He'd get on all fours and slam his head on the floor because he was mad. And I'm like, what is this? So just very...
My demon child.
We're very different. And now, he's great. He's amazing. But he had to go through this phase of like learning how to deal with emotions. I think is tough for little boys. And he's still working on it. But yeah, very different. Very different parenting styles in a way.
Do you think, because I have a couple other friends who whose kids have really big emotions, do you think that the big emotions are at all attributed to the generational factors that kids are facing today?
I do. I think it all goes back to coping, right? I think a lot when we were raised, we had to have patience. You drove if you went on a car ride with your parents, there was no iPad that you got to play on. You had to literally look out the window and be like, I spy something green. Like there was this different level of connection that happened. And I think a different level of self-soothing and self-contentment that had to happen. You had to be okay with just being by yourself and being with who you are. And I think because we've kind of stripped those opportunities away from kids don't really get to have those opportunities to just be still and be alone and contemplate things and be okay with that and know that nothing has to keep them busy. They don't have to have instant gratification. I think it's really played a part in being able to cope
Yeah.
and to self-soothe and to reassure yourself. I think those skills have really been stripped away.
That's so interesting. And as you're saying that, I'm going, well, I mean, we could take the iPad, we could
Mhm.
take the phone and make them do that. But there's also this level, I think, as adults where we find discomfort in the being alone and in the
Absolutely.
quiet and in the, so it's interesting. Like maybe we're even like putting that on them. Like, no, 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 that's weird. We don't want to just drive and look at the meadow as we drive. Like, but
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
yeah.
think so. And I think as a parent myself, life is busy, right? And to just have those few precious moments to just be numb for a minute is, you want that as a parent, and sometimes you need that. And
Oh
how
God.
convenient is
Yeah.
it to just be like, go away? you know? And so I think there's some self-reflection, and yeah, absolutely. I think we are more comfortable with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000%.
Mhm.
Well, you touched a bit on, you were 15 years old when you were diagnosed with lupus, and that's been quite a journey. Most people that know you don't know, would never know.
Yeah.
I would have never known unless we became good friends
Yeah.
and you shared some things, just your journey. And,
Yeah.
but why is that? Because lupus is a pretty tough autoimmune. And where do you gain your strength? I mean,
Yeah.
you're somebody that never called off sick from work. You showed up every day in, day. Like
Yeah.
people don't know when you're not feeling good.
Yeah.
Like, so tell me one where you get that strength.
Yeah.
And also like, how are you navigating this autoimmune that you have?
Yeah. Um, I think there from a young age, I always felt a power of the mind, right? Like it's like mind over matter. If you
Mm,
can really push yourself in your mind, I think your body follows. And so I think at, 15 years old, it was hard. I was a athlete. I softball, volleyball, basketball, it was my life, and so I think to get that diagnosis was pretty devastating cuz I really couldn't compete at the level that I was used to. Um but like luckily about a year with different medications, therapies, those kinds of things, I was able to participate again and um felt more like myself. And I think the thing that just always kept driving me is that I knew that it could get better. Like no matter, I'd wake up one day and I couldn't move, I couldn't grab anything. I'd drop things, break things. I would get real angry. I'll be honest. Like that's my comfort emotion. Like instead of being sad, like I'll get angry.
mm,
And I think that goes back to that grit. It like it fuels my fire. Like this isn't going to
mhm,
take me. I'm not going to be a victim of this. I'm going to overcome this. And
mhm.
so I think, I did different medications. For a while, I was on methotrexate, which is like a form of chemotherapy, and I absolutely hated it. I'm like, why am I doing this? And I feel like in my specific journey with the doctors I was working with, it never felt like I was in control. It was always what the doctor thought I should take. And, oh, well, let's try this medication and let's try this medication. And I never really felt better. It was more just like enough to tolerate life.
Yeah, the Band-Aid.
Yes. And
Hmm.
so after a while, I maybe my stubbornness comes from the generations of Slovenians I have. I'm actually third generation American, and my great grandma came from Yugoslavia when it was still a country, and very stubborn, and had 5 kids, and her husband died and didn't speak English and sold moonshine to survive. And so I
Wow.
think there's this generational strength that it's just like this stubbornness. And a lot of times when I talk to parents with stubborn kids, I'm like, listen, this is a good trait. I know it's hard right now. I know it's hard right now. But being stubborn is something that I think can take you through anything in life. You just have to figure out how to challenge it and channel it.
That's a
And
good
so
perspective. That's a good
yeah. And
perspective.
so I very much just became stubborn, and I
Yeah.
decided I was just going to do what I wanted with my health. And I just stopped going to the doctor. And I've just been using plant-based medicine and yoga and, just trying to take care of my body. And I've been off medication for, I think it's been 5 years now. Yes, 5 years now. Just because I was a little nervous with the medication I was taking during COVID, I decided like, I don't really even need it. Why am I even doing this? And so since then, I've been completely medicine free, no flare ups, been feeling great. And so, yeah, I don't know. It
Well,
might come back and rear its ugly head,
I
but
doubt it. I doubt it. I'm a big believer in the mind over matter. But you said you had that strength when you were pretty young, and so I'm really curious where that you think that came from. And then I also just want to acknowledge, like, you don't do social media.
No.
Like, you're not on social media. Like,
one of the rare dinosaurs.
we laughed because you said that you find your numbing through like, games on your phone, right? Or, and I know you love true crime and you're a podcaster and all of that, but like where did you get the mind over matter? Where did that strength come from? And then the follow up to that is, really like, where did you get the knowledge? Because I feel like we all go to the internet now to research, I don't want to do this medicine, or we start following the gurus that give us the advice for XYZ. And you just kind of internally, I don't know. Maybe there's a story and I'm not sure about it.
That's a great question. I think, a lot of it is just my intuition. I just really feel like there's so much power we have as humans that we probably have not even been close to tapping. And I just think our intuition is often ignored or goes against the grain of what we're being told or what we're reading. And so maybe the lack of that input helped me connect more to just my internal intuition.
I'm here for it.
Honestly, I've never really thought about it, but I remember being younger, right after I had Malia, maybe she was like 2 or 3. And I remember reading books at the library and reading different, types of things you could do with your diet and things like that. And it just never really helped or clicked, or I don't know what. And so it just felt better just going on my own journey, I guess. It's I've never really thought about it, but it's almost an intuition. It's being still with yourself. I think through yoga, I meditate every morning, and it's just this feeling of like, how am I? How am I feeling? How does my body feel? Like, what's going on internally? Just having that connection time, I think is big.
Yeah, I'm big into meditation.
Yes.
I think that's something that you and I really connect through, and I can't even tell you, like, that to me has been a superpower for me. And you call it meditation, you can call it prayer. Really, it's getting quiet. It's spending time, and we don't do that. We're scrolling, we're busy, we're going 100. I mean, we're all very high-powered people, but just giving your space. Do you have any thoughts or tips for people that maybe haven't tapped into that or haven't thought about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the easiest thing to do when you start meditation is to find some sort of soothing sound, and I would recommend noise canceling headphones because it just really creates like a different kind of space, and then I think it's as simple as all you want to think about is breathing in and breathing out. And if your brain starts to wander, you just go back to breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And it just like, that's a way to start. And then you can kind of develop from there. But it's just, and even if it's a minute,
Right. I was
2
going to say it
minutes.
does feel awkward when you
Like
first get going and you're kind of like, okay, I'm done counting my breaths. I've counted to 100 and I'm over it. And that's part of the lack of
Yeah.
patience that we have,
Yeah.
right? Like, but it is
And when you think about it, meditation, I was just thinking that as you were talking, meditation is going back to exactly like we talked about earlier, that road trip when you're a little kid and there is nothing to do but sit in the car and be alone with yourself. Like
yeah.
that's what you should do. Like
That's
it's important, it's powerful, it's tapping into who you really are and being
mhm,
comfortable and also appreciating it. I think that's the other thing is like
mhm.
appreciating who you are and what your body can do and just pretty amazing.
Yeah. So navigating autoimmune through
Mm-hmm.
plant-based medicine, fueling your body and yoga and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If there's anybody else that's listening in that's like, I'm trying, it's not
Yeah.
working. Like, what's your advice to them or
Yeah.
thoughts?
Um, I think the other thing that I haven't really mentioned that has been huge is sleep for me. And if you are not getting the correct amount for you, and I think everybody has a different amount. I've met people that if they get anything over 4 hours, it's too much and they feel terrible all day.
Yeah.
And so like you definitely have to find like your magic amount. But I think sleep is where your body repairs. If you don't get sleep, you're not going to repair. And
Yeah.
so that would be another thing I would just tell people is it's very important. Sleep habits are so important. And it goes back to the phone and social media. You have to shut that off. There's studies show an hour before you go to bed. Otherwise it just messes with your entire sleep.
Oh, so my doom scrolling when I go to
Yes,
bed isn't good for me?
bad.
Okay, noted. Actually, I know
Very
that.
bad.
Well, and then I'm sitting here thinking too, like, you're 42. So, have you started to experience any perimenopause symptoms? And has
Yeah.
that like played into autoimmune, or do you think the
Yeah.
things that you're doing are even helping with some of that?
I think the things I'm doing are helping with that. The one thing I would say I've noticed just recently, actually, just this summer, is like shedding, major hair shedding. I'm like, oh my, and I have lots of hair,
Yeah.
but it just feels like it's just a never ending shedding. And I'm thinking that might be it. Who knows? But yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Another journey.
Another journey of figuring it out. I know you're still pretty young into it. So we
Mhm.
might have to tap into it again and
Heck
see how
yeah.
you're feeling and if perimenopause has changed anything.
For
But
sure.
well, you've had so many things that I just want to glean your wisdom on. So another one that I want to shift about, you guys had, you've been married to Jeremy for, was it
19 years.
19 years? You've known each other since you were 15. Like
Yeah.
Jeremy's also one of my favorite people, like his heart, his mind, like, I mean, his energy. I could just
Yeah.
see why you guys were just such a perfect match. But you had a big like news that came, was it like a year ago?
Yeah,
Like
it was
he
in the
got sick
fall.
and
Mhm.
it was like news you never imagined hearing.
Mhm.
Just to build it up a little bit, like I remember just talking to you and, he was diagnosed
Mhm.
with unspecified lymphoma
Mhm.
and he was declining pretty rapidly.
Mhm.
And so take us on that journey.
Yeah. Holy cow.
The good news is, I'll give the spoiler
Yeah.
alert, he was misdiagnosed
Yes.
and he's actually doing 1,000 times better.
Ugh,
But
so
we're
lucky.
talking about like you guys were making plans for him to not be here.
Yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
can't even imagine just that journey.
Mhm.
And like, I want to know all the
Yeah.
things. And then like, how has that changed you?
Yeah, absolutely. So he, his health has been bad for um oh gosh, probably a good 8-10 years if we really like think back to all the things he'd been dealing with. But we really started trying to seek out medical help, I would say about 2 years ago. And what he was experiencing, it was very weird because what he was experiencing was very similar to what I experienced when I was diagnosed with lupus.
Mhm.
Lots of just traveling inflammation, lots of pain in his back. One day would be completely fine, no issues. The next day was like couldn't even walk. And so just lots of back and forth. Went through different medical professionals, went through a rheumatologist. They were like, we think he has arthritis, but we don't know what. We're going to put him on the same thing I was on with, what is that chemotherapy, that methotrexate. And that, of course, just made him feel worse. He was vomiting a lot. He was just really tired, just not feeling good. And so he decided, like, no, this is not the route I want to go. And so he decided to stop that medication, and had just been kind of dealing with it. Found some alternate medications through one of his friends, and was trying to do kind of that route, and it was helping at times, not helping at times. Fast forward to this last fall, we had gone to the sand dunes, and myself and our two kids and Jeremy, and he just couldn't do anything. He literally just was in the truck, and at one point we were driving home, and he's like, I feel like I'm dying. And I'm like, what? Don't say that. Like, you cannot say that. And so
And Jeremy's the guy that he'll go to the dunes. He'll do all the
he'll
things.
ignore all his problems.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's like, let me just, he's a caregiver. He like
Yes.
wants to, he's the protector.
Yes.
So he's not gonna,
No.
he's not probably letting you on to how bad it is.
Agreed.
Until this moment.
Absolutely. And so he ends up going to the ER, and they basically tell him that he has unspecified lymphoma, and we get discharged with a referral to a cancer doctor. And side note, turns out the referral was outside of our network anyway, so thanks a lot, ER. Medical system, super great. But we follow, this path of cancer. We're meeting with an oncologist. They're doing test after test after test after test. We joke he we joke that they're his stab wounds, because he had to do, gosh, I don't even know how many biopsies and surgeries, and they finally ended up, because everything was so inflamed, they couldn't even biopsy something, so they were able to like remove an entire lymph node. And finally, gosh, I want to say it was about 2 months, once they finally removed that lymph node, they were able to test it, and they figured out that he had what's called Whipple's disease. And here's another one of our lovely jokes, is that Whipple's affects 1 in 1 million people. So I just say he's 1 in a million. But this is where
Thank you,
feel
Jesus,
like,
for that diagnosis. I mean, like,
literally. And that's where I just feel like I joke a lot with my family that I'm the lucky, unlucky one. Like, I'm an unlucky, lucky person. I always have these like brushes with these terrible things, but it always kind of like comes out in this path of, everything's okay. Like, it all ends up okay. And so it was really funny. We ended up at infectious disease because it's a bacteria that is found in the soil. And as a human, you have to be have the right biome, I guess, to have the bacteria even attached to your belly. So that's why it's so rare. But Jeremy is just a rare being, and had it all come
in
together.
the soil? Like, was he eating dirt? Like, what the heck? This is so weird.
This is where we think he's probably had this for over a decade,
Of
because
course.
he used to work in landscaping, and he used to also do playgrounds. And so that's the only thing we can think of why he was in the dirt. He's not a farmer. He's not, and so luckily we meet with this infectious disease doctor. He's like completely nerded out, so excited to see a Whipple's case. And we get him on some antibiotics, and he had to do an IV drip for about a month. And I would say within a month, he just was coming back to who he really was. But going back to that idea of, I just remember driving home one day and just thinking, like, I'm going to raise my kids by myself.
Yeah.
And it was just this shock. And I think being able to work through that, and like, it just showed, I guess, a different appreciation for our marriage. And like, I joke now, I'm like, I think everybody needs to go through a near-death experience, because it just changes the way you look at your partner and how you appreciate them. I think in life, we are busy. We are tired, and who gets the brunt of all our problems? Our partner,
Yeah.
right? Like, you had a long day at work, and the kids need this and that, and the trash is overpiling, and you're trying to do dinner, and it's like, can you, and
Right.
it changes how you think about things. And I think it drastically changed how he thinks about
Yeah.
things from his perspective. He very much thought he was gonna die.
Yeah.
We had multiple talks about what that looks like. And so again, like, I just feel like in hindsight, there's this, I'm glad we went through that. It's the same thing as like being diagnosed with lupus. I am glad I went through that. It made me such a tougher person. Like,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been as solid or tough as a person if I didn't go through these things. And so
Yeah.
I think that's really important in life. Like, life is not about comfort. Life is
What?
about growth, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be uncomfortable, and you have to go through things to change and grow and evolve. And so yeah, we just celebrated our 19th anniversary, and just so grateful.
Yeah. Took a nice trip
Yep.
to the mountains, and I just really appreciate you sharing that. Like, and I can't even imagine. I remember when we talked through some of it, and you guys were in the thick of like planning,
Mm-hmm.
like what was life going to look like without him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this doctor say, "Oh, a month on antibiotics,"
And he's
and
good to go.
he's good to go. And I would say I feel like it's changed Jeremy, but I think Jeremy's just such a steady Eddie, kind, loving. Like, it probably has made him maybe a little bit deeper
Yeah.
on a spiritual level, but
Agreed.
at the same
Definitely.
time, like, I don't know, he's a good dude. Like,
Thank you.
so
That was great.
I'm damn.
Yeah. It was wild. It was wild.
Yeah.
But, we made it through, and like, such a good scenario. Like, I never imagined it ending up that way, and I'm so appreciative.
Yeah. And I think there's so much wisdom in what you shared about, we are in the thick of life. We're going 100 miles an hour. Like, we are so lucky if we have somebody that we get to share this life with. And, but it's like sometimes we're not always grateful. I think it's easier to be like you said, they get the brunt of things. And so it's kind of one of those like moments to just, I think for all of us, I think anybody that's listening maybe can have an opportunity to just pause and reflect on that. Because it's kind of like when you do lose somebody.
Yeah.
And then you're like, gosh, I just wish everybody knew, like, to say goodbye before you leave, to, make amends before you go to sleep, to do all those things. But like, you're kind of getting that second chance, if you will.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel like I'm just so grateful for it, because instead of like taking from our life, I think this experience enriched our life.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
And it's kind of a shitty way to go, wow, what a gift.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think that that's the silver lining in life. Like, if you do have a growth mindset, you can like really take from that and go, I wish he wasn't sick. I wish he didn't have to go through that. But look how much stronger, and look how closer we are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that experience taught me is just how amazing people are, like, so many people just want to show up for us, and
Yeah.
you included.
Yeah. Well, I think what's hard, actually, like bringing that up, like, I think it's hard. People don't know how to show up for people that are struggling. Sometimes you're like, God, I want to show up and I want to do the things. And, but sometimes people are really private and they don't even know how to accept help. Anyway.
Yeah, I very much.
For those of you who are not watching, she's pointing to herself.
It's true. I very much, when I was going through this, poor Kathy, I know you just wanted to do anything you could. And I think when I was going through it, I didn't want to talk to people about it because it's all I could think about. And so I wanted to distract myself, and so I really didn't reach out for help or support. And you're so great. You know me by now, and that's how I function. And when I'm ready, I'll come out of my hibernation, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to talk now.
Yeah.
But I think I think that is really hard, because when you're going through it, you don't know what to ask for or how to even ask, or, you're just trying to survive. And so that's a great question.
Yeah, it's just a hard space period,
Mhm.
and I think knowing you, it was just a, hey, I'll just check in, and,
Mhm.
and I didn't never took it personal. I
Yeah.
mean, like I
Yeah.
knew like when you were ready,
Call.
I was there,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
When the sunshine came out, we would find our way to the
That's
sun.
right. Sun sisters.
Uh, well, let's shift a little bit because, you that's such good stuff. But there's so much wisdom you have to offer too with what you've been doing for, you say 16 years, but you've been like counseling and just part of like mental health for a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
And we met through that,
Mhm.
through COVID. It was a very interesting time in education,
Sure was.
and in just the mental health space in general. And I want to just start off by just before we get into it, just for anybody listening, like you and I are both very much like we're both parents.
Mhm.
We have had our own challenges with our own children. And then when you have 300 or 400 or sometimes 500 kids that you're navigating at schools, they become your children too.
Absolutely.
And, there is no handbook.
Mm-mm.
Like we are millennial Gen Xers, and our playbook was, how did our parents raise us? And most of us are like, we're doing exact opposite. But nowadays, like with social media and all the things, I joke and say we're kind of living in this multi-generational
Yeah,
social media parenting era
for sure.
where there's so much wisdom and advice.
Yes.
And I love what you said earlier about intuition,
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
think there's so much noise out there,
Mhm.
so much noise around
Yes.
how do I do it? Like I don't know, like
Yeah.
gentle parenting. I definitely was not a gentle parent.
Mm-mm.
And my kids are
Would
fine.
not
Are my kids
recommend.
fine?
Your kids are great. Would not recommend gentle parenting
I
for
say
those of
that.
you out there.
I say that. I'm like, are my kids fine?
They're amazing. They're not fine. They're
Anyway,
amazing.
I don't know. Like, no judgment if you are into the gentle parenting era, but I do think that it has raised, or we are raising kids. Like, one of my biggest questions for you is we see this huge spike in entitlement.
Mhm.
And you work mostly middle school, high school.
Mhm.
So, like kids that are really coming into their personality and like start ages where parents are maybe starting to loosen up a little bit, or if they've ever had the reins, I don't know. Some
Yeah.
of them haven't. But
Yeah.
where do you see this entitlement come from? And
Yeah.
how do you like, how do parents nowadays navigate that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there is kind of a shift in parenting that happened. And I think what happened as parents, and I think the intention is good. I don't think intention is ever bad, but I think many parents want to save their kids, or if their kids are going to go through something uncomfortable, or maybe they're dealing with something uncomfortable. I think as parents, we want to rescue them from that. We want them to feel better.
Well,
We want them
absolutely.
to feel
We
good,
want to
right?
minimize pain. I don't want
Absolutely.
my kids to hurt.
Absolutely.
However,
Yes.
comma,
Yeah, however, comma. I
yeah.
think this trend has very much lent itself towards entitlement, right? Like if you're a kid and you're raised and your parent has always taken care of everything, right? From laundry to cleaning up after you to, oh, the teacher is saying this, I'll go get them, all these things where if you remove any sort of discomfort from your kid, when you think about how do we grow as humans? We grow as humans when we face a challenge, when we're uncomfortable. It makes us grow.
Mhm.
So when you take those opportunities away from your kid, thinking I'm fixing it for them, I'm paving a smoother path for them. What you're doing is you're taking away their opportunities to grow as a person, and you're taking away opportunities for them to build their self-esteem. hey, I faced this difficult obstacle. Maybe talked with my parents. My parents gave me some advice and I navigated and I went through the obstacle. I made it. That's a whole different like feeling when you just know your parent paved the way for you. You
Mm.
don't get to have that opportunity to grow. You don't get to have that opportunity to feel good about yourself. And so I think that very much has led towards this entitlement. Um, of, well, what do you mean I have to be uncomfortable? What do you mean I have to do something I don't want to do? I've never had to do that growing up, And so when you think about parenting, your job is not to make your kid happy. That is not the goal of parenting. The goal of parenting is to help your child grow up and be equipped with skills so that they can become a person. Your kid is not yours forever. Your kid is their own person. You want to equip them with skills.
I feel like you're looking into my soul. I mean, let's be honest, like that sounds great. And I believe all of that
Yeah, yeah,
wholeheartedly.
yeah.
But it is fucking hard.
Uh-huh. I
I
would
mean,
agree.
like it is hard. And I don't think that my boys are entitled.
No.
And I have worked with some very, very entitled kids and I know you have too, that parents are really truly feeling like they're doing the best they can. Some
Mm-hmm.
of them feel like they have no control though.
Yeah.
And there's also situations where you have like multiple households and broken homes and
Yeah.
like
That's very difficult.
your blended families and so you're bringing in all these different parenting ideals as well.
Yeah.
And
And you
then
have no control over the other side, right?
no, but I do think
Absolutely.
it is important to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's wonderful
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah. And I think I think it goes back again to instant gratification too. If you are constantly in a generation where things are at your fingertips, like I remember when we were little kids and we needed to look up something on the internet, it was like you went down to this cold room in your basement where the computer lived and you had to make sure no one was on the phone because, you needed to use the phone line and you had to wait 15 minutes for it to even connect to the internet. And so I think instant gratification has also been a contributor to that entitlement because it's like, I want it now and I should get it now. That's what life is about now, now, now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's hard.
Whew, so hard, so hard. Well, now parents are mostly like if moms are listening in, they are raising Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
So crazy.
So like totally different generations than I mean, I have Gen Z, but they're at the they're the old Gen Z, right? But what is a collective theme that you're seeing among these generations?
I kind of thought about that this morning. Because I do think this, having two kids in two different generations myself, I think I very much can relate to that. And, I really think one of the big themes that stand out to me is loneliness. I have a lot of kids talk to me about feeling alone, feeling unseen, feeling unheard. And I think that there's obviously several things that contribute to that, but I do think social media is a big piece to it. I think as kids grow up, their social skills are changing due to social media, and when you're sitting there in your room and you're scrolling and you're seeing all your friends hanging out, or you're seeing this and that, and granted, these are all falsities, right? Like anybody can post anything on social media and it looks like truth, but it's not truth. But in your mind, it's truth. And so I think that just breeds a sense of loneliness. The other thing that I think really happens with families nowadays, and I just challenge you to maybe look at your phone and see how many hours you're on your phone, and then look at your kid's phone and see how many hours they're on their phone, and remember you're the model. And I think a lot of times I have to remind myself, put your phone down. You're sitting here with your kid right now watching a movie and all you're doing is playing your game. That's not real connectiveness, and I think we need to model that connectiveness so that they know how to do that, because as kids, their world is so different that they don't have those same social skills to connect and really
Mhm.
be connected to friends. It's all through this phone and social media and messaging. And so it just, I think, creates a lot of loneliness. And I think loneliness leads to sadness, right? And that's a dangerous slope,
You
especially
just
as a
skip the rabbit hole.
teenager.
I was just having this conversation with Colin because he
Mm-hmm.
just moved into an apartment by himself.
Mm-hmm.
His friends are coming back in August, but he's going to be
Alone.
alone physically,
Yeah.
for a good month and a half.
Yeah.
And, I reminded him that loneliness and being alone are two different things,
Absolutely.
right? Being alone is you have nobody.
Yes.
And you physically might not be with somebody. However, you always have us. We are four and a
Absolutely.
half hours away. You can always pick up the phone and call us. You have your brother. You have,
Yeah.
anyway. And so I think that that's
That
really
was
important.
yes, that's an important conversation to have,
But
you
also
know?
just recognizing that. I mean, he said it to me. He said,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to be alone. I've
Mm-hmm.
never been alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we even talked about this conversation around independence. I said,
Yeah.
Colin, you're so independent. You're so
Mm-hmm.
strong. And he goes, no, I actually hate being alone. And I said, independence and being alone are not the same thing.
Yeah.
So we talked about the difference between being strong and independent and taking risks and like living by yourself and not coming home for like how
Yeah.
that's like an independent decision.
Absolutely.
But like, anyway,
And a confidence builder, right? Like
1000%.
I
Yeah.
don't like to be alone, but I'm going
Hmm.
to do this and I'm going to grow as a human.
Yeah.
Like that is
I was
huge.
like, you kind of just described me. I'm very independent, but I don't like to be alone either.
No.
I'm a
Yeah.
very connected, not social media. I love being around people. I'm very
Yes.
outgoing. I get my energy from people. And he was
Yes.
describing that to me. It kind of made my heart happy and then sad,
Aw.
but we had a good teachable moment or a good
Absolutely.
conversation. But that makes me sad. I guess
But also I just want to
we
point
hadn't
out
even
like
talked about that. I think that's interesting.
but I also think like I just want to point out how amazing that you were able to have that conversation with
Yeah.
him and he was
Yeah.
able to like talk to you about it.
Yeah. Super
And that's
grateful for that.
exactly what I think what I mean by connectiveness, right? He's obviously connected to you because he feels like he can tell you his innermost scary thoughts
Yeah.
and talk to you about that. And when you think about as a parent, that's how you know you're on the right path
Yeah.
is if your kid is doing that. If your kid's not doing that, you're not on the right path. Something needs to change. If they're not opening up to you, if they're not talking to you, if, and I think a lot, like the kids that come into my office, a lot of times, to be honest, they want to share the gossip with me because they want to know that somebody cares what's going on in their world. And I mean, that's really as a parent, that's what you want. You want that juicy gossip. Tell me what's going on with blah, 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 because that's their world. You need to show interest in their world.
Yeah.
And that will bring them back and back.
Yeah. It made me think of something I watched and it was on social media. So judge me if you want. Of this mom having a conversation with her kid and they were teaching their kid all of the language, and it's just like how to speak their speak because these
Yes,
generations even have like a different language. They're like
absolutely.
creating words that we've never even heard of.
Yes.
So it's, yeah.
Yes. If you know the slang, you're doing a good job.
And if you don't, just lean in.
Lean in some more.
Yeah. Have the conversations, find the ways.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you and I worked through COVID together, and that was like one of the most craziest times. And I just remember like the huge uptick in mental health and like
Mm-hmm.
talk about loneliness, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
kids were like stuck in their home, in their bedrooms, like nobody was connected. I mean,
Yeah,
collectively, we were all feeling that way.
absolutely.
But I'm just curious if you've continued to see a rise in mental health
Mm-hmm.
or if you feel like just mental health among teenagers and young adults has been a theme and it's always been there. Like I'm just are we seeing more mental health? Are we like with
Mm-hmm.
this loneliness theme or has it
Yeah.
always been there?
It's a great question. I think it's always been there. I think through COVID, I think we were more open to the idea of talking about it. It was more in our face. It was more, aggressive, I guess. As a whole, we couldn't ignore it. But I do think that this has been a theme long before COVID. And when you really think about COVID, the reason why I think it became such a feeling of maybe like emergency, almost that mental health emergency, um, which is, it's sad, but I think it comes back to families are not connected the way they're supposed to be. They're not, um, the
Sitting
way they were
around the
meant to
table
be,
having dinner
right? And
together.
so, if you go through, if you were a fortunate child who went through COVID with a very connective family, and they used that opportunity to say, "Oh my gosh, this is great. We have so much together time, whereas we were so busy before." That's great for you. Like that's amazing for you. But if you were that kid that their family's not connected and it's broken and it's unhealthy and it's toxic, and that's when we saw that emergency level kind of
Mm,
rise,
yeah.
because school was enough to help maintain for those kids a little bit of a healthy, structured, consistent place. And so that's why I think the rise in mental health happened. I really think it comes back to family systems. And were
Mm,
you a lucky one in a great family system, or were you an unlucky one? And but as far as teenagers and struggling with their mental health, I mean, long before COVID has this been going on.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just is it the uptick of loneliness? Is it
I think
the,
so. You
yeah.
strip away your consistency in a school and a structure of school and your connection with your friends.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
The lack of skills, the lack of resilience.
Absolutely. I will say I've heard, my son is in elementary school, and I've talked to some elementary teachers, and I will say they have seen a huge impact as far as social skills with these younger generations that were itty bitties during COVID and
Sure.
didn't get to go to kindergarten or preschool or something like that. There's a pretty big impact, it sounds like, amongst the elementary
Yeah.
school teachers. But as far as middle school and high school, I think it's something that's been there for a long time, but when you remove that important structure of school, I think that just highlighted and made things worse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. So challenging. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, parenting is the hardest job I think we'll ever have. And I guess that's probably my last question. I think there's so many amazing, like, parents out there,
Yeah,
right? I
absolutely.
always come from this space of like, we are all doing the best that we can. I believe
100%.
that wholeheartedly.
100%.
I would challenge you, a lot of you, with that question. Like, do you believe that people are doing the
Mm-hmm.
best that they can?
With what they have and what they know, absolutely.
And I do. At my core, I believe that. And with that being said, parenting is so hard. So, is there any last parting words for the parents out there that are just in the thick of it, going, "Oh my God, am I going to survive parenthood?" Because
Yeah.
some of them have it.
Yeah.
Some of them
Yeah.
are. I mean, like, when I say the thick of it, there's levels. It's like on a
Yes.
scale of 1 to 10. They're out of
Yes.
10. So,
There's some spirited children out there. Um, yeah, I do think the message I would say is you will survive it. um, and the other thing I would say is remember this is temporary. And I know that's easy for
parenting is
someone to
temporary.
say. It's temporary, the phase you're going in.
Okay,
You know what
I
I
like
mean?
that.
Like you go into the 15-year-old phase. Whew. And it's rough. But then you hit this stride in, junior, senior year where they're really coming into themselves and there's a different level of appreciation that happens. And so just remember as a parent, it's phases. You
Mm,
make it through the difficult phases. It's just like life. Like it's never smooth. Life is never smooth. As soon as you feel like, oh, we're cruising, it's like, bam, smack you in the face. Like something's going to happen. And so I think like when you think about parenting, it's a phase.
mm,
And the more work you put in the beginning, the easier your parenting will be in the end. That's my other advice is I think there's a lot lost on little kid parenting that is so vital and crucial that plays into middle school parenting that parents don't realize.
yeah, but like, we're midlife, so our kids are not young anymore. So can I take that advice into me through grandparenthood?
Heck yes, you can. Except for at that point, you just spoil them rotten and you
Right.
let the parents deal with it because it's not your problem no more.
I agree with you. And I think like if a young
Yeah.
parent, if a young person's listening to this, that's great.
Older parents. Okay.
But is there room? Is there space to correct?
Yes, there's always space to correct. I think the big thing that I hear from high schoolers all the time is I think they feel like their parents are just annoyed with them. I think they hit this
Oh,
phase, where it's built and it's hit this crescendo and it just feels like neither party's going to give. And so I think there's this softening that has to happen as a parent if you're really like butting heads with your kid. I think it's important to just have a very honest conversation.
mm,
Like, let's just talk about things. Can I just talk to you? This is
mhm.
how I'm feeling in our relationship. How are you feeling in this relationship? And I think it's really important. Kids have a hard time sharing how they're really feeling. And so it's very important to just be silent.
Mm.
Don't fill the air with your words. I think when
Listen.
just
Mhm.
shut up and listen. The other advice I would give is it's so much better to have a conversation in the car. It's so much better to
Oh
have a
my, I cannot agree
conversation
with that
while
more.
you're doing something, whether it's
Hmm.
painting or whatever you guys like to do, go for a walk, whatever. It's it's better to have a conversation when you're actually doing something. The words flow a little easier. It's less intimidating. Um, I
What is it
think
about the car?
I
Man, I tell
know
you what,
it's true. Get them in a car ride.
maybe
Go
that's
take
a
a
new
little.
profession, car
Yeah.
therapy.
Okay, so I have had this brilliant idea, and I told Jeremy this because I love to drive. I'm a driver. I will road trip it 12 hours in one day and be like, that's nothing. And so my idea is I would be a airport, I would take you to the airport, and you would get a therapy session to the airport. Because a lot of times maybe you're flying to a funeral. Maybe you're
Mm.
flying to a family reunion. Maybe you've got a business trip coming up. You just need to talk through some things on your way to the airplane. Pretty brilliant idea.
The
But I
counseling
agree.
Uber.
Counseling Uber, counseling concierge. But I do think it's just important to keep showing them that you're not annoyed. You're going to keep showing up. You want to know how they're feeling. You want to know. My other advice is I think sometimes especially if kids are very closed off, I think it's important to meet them where they're at. And I think kids are very comfortable with texting versus talking through something. And so one of the things that I've recommended to different kids and parents, and it's been pretty successful, is a notebook. Literally a notebook that you guys write in every night, and you just sit on the couch and you write back and forth to each other. And there is no verbal conversation. I think that's less intimidating. And I think the other thing that lends its hand to is you truly have to listen to what they're saying because you have to read everything before you can respond. I think a lot of times as humans, we hear the first couple of words and we're already busy in our mind about, oh, yeah, but la, 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 and not even listening to what's being said.
I
So
love
both
that.
parties.
I think that would feel super awkward,
It
but
would. It does.
I think it's
It
a
does.
really great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, so good.
Yeah.
Drop the mic. Good. All
I
right.
hope.
Let's finish up with just my lighthearted, fast and furious questions.
Oh, Fast and Furious.
So you're not allowed to really think about these. These are
Okay.
just okay. So
Okay.
what's a song that always puts you in a good mood?
A good song. We'll listen to it on our car ride back. It's called "Wow" by Beck. It's
Okay.
an old one, but it's a good one. It's
Oldie
got
and
that
goodie.
beat that just hits.
I thought you were going to say middle fingers in the air.
That's a good one too. That's my jam. That's my bop.
That's our jam. Okay. Favorite beauty product?
Beauty product. Oh, I love my Brazilian Bum Bum cream from Amazon. It's just so nice. Really like
That doesn't like
moisturizing.
bum cream. Like, where are you putting this cream?
On your bum and your legs and your arms and wherever you want.
Okay, I like it. Guilty pleasure you cannot resist.
Oh God, I'm a sucker for like caffeine. Any like a good old or ice cream. Those would be my two.
Okay.
Ice cream or like a yummy frap or something. Just delish.
All the delicious.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing that you wish your younger self would have known?
that nobody gives a shit what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like when you think back to your high school self and you're like walking down the hall, it's like, oh my God, everyone's staring at me. Guess what? Everybody's thinking the same thing and nobody gives a shit about what you're
staring
doing.
at you. They're worried about themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you're like living that day in and day out in the hallways. You're like, nope, nobody's thinking about you. Get to class.
Nobody gives a shit. Go, go, go.
Okay. And lastly, what is an unfulfilled bucket list dream of yours?
Oh, I would really like to go to that pig beach place. Have you ever seen that? You swim with pigs in the water. I don't know. It just seems weird and fancy.
Where are you seeing this place?
I don't know. It's going to be great. We'll go swim with some pigs. Or like one of those cool places where you like walk out like on a bridge into the water and then your place is like in the water.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes. That would be cool too.
Okay. I'm there
either
with
one
you.
of those.
I love it.
And then we can pet some pigs.
Thank you for sharing your story, for spreading your wisdom. It's so great. I always love spending time with you. Hey friend, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. I hope it brought you value, a few laughs, and maybe even an aha moment. The conversation doesn't end here. We've got an amazing community of women waiting to connect with you. Join us on Facebook in the Girlfriend's Guide to Midlife podcast community group, where we share takeaways, swap stories, and cheer each other on. You can also find me on Instagram at Girlfriends Midlife Podcast for daily inspiration, sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, and a behind-the-scenes look at this midlife journey. Or on my personal handle at DearCathy719, where I share about my day-to-day life, real estate, and what I find inspiration in. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you left a quick rating and review. It helps more women like us discover the podcast and reminds me that I'm not just talking to myself over here. And don't forget to hit the follow button so you'll be the first to know when the next episode drops. Check out the show notes for links to connect with today's guest and all the goodies we have mentioned. Until next time, keep thriving and showing the world how fabulous midlife can be. You've got this.